I am Simone, 34 years old, and I watched my son Leo blow out his 8th birthday candles alone. My entire family, my parents, my golden boy brother, chose a fancy dinner over him. Days later, my father texted me, "Need $3,500 for your brother's graduation party. This is mandatory." I sent him $2 and a note. The next time my father showed up at my apartment, I had changed the locks. The time after that, he brought the cops. He had no idea I had been waiting for this moment. Before I tell you what happened when the police arrived, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever felt like the black sheep, just waiting for your moment. The big number 8 balloon, silver and shiny, bobbed silently against the living room ceiling. It was the only thing moving. I looked at the clock on the stove. 6:03 p.m. The party was supposed to have started at 4. My son Leo sat at the head of our small kitchen table, his little shoulders slumped beneath his Spider-Man costume. He wasn't crying, not yet. He was just quiet. And in our house, quiet was always worse than crying. He picked a single sad pepperoni off the cold, untouched sheet pizza. Around us, the apartment was screaming, "Party!" Red and blue streamers drooped from the ceiling. A dozen chocolate cupcakes with carefully placed Spider-Man rings sat on the counter. I had spent 2 days baking them, decorating them, making sure every detail was perfect. It was just the two of us. "Mommy," Leo's voice was small, muffled by the silence. "Is Grandma Denise coming?" My heart, which I thought had already braced itself for this, seemed to crack right down the middle. I don't know, baby. You know how traffic gets on a Friday." It was a weak lie, and we both knew it. "She promised," he whispered. "She said she and Grandpa Lawrence would be here at 5. And Uncle Marcus promised to bring me the new Lego set, the Star Wars one." He didn't understand. He was only 8. He still believed in promises, especially from family. He still thought Grandma and Grandpa were words that meant safety and unconditional love. I hadn't yet taught him that in our family, those words meant conditions. They meant prerequisites. They meant not us. I looked away from his disappointed eyes because I saw my own reflection in them. I was 10 years old again, standing in the wings of my middle school auditorium. My shoes were 2 tight hand-me-downs from a cousin. I had just won first place in the citywide art competition. My painting, a watercolor of the Atlanta skyline at dusk, was on an easel in the center of the stage. My teacher, Mrs. Gable, had told me to save 2 seats for my parents right up front. I waited through the entire awards ceremony. I waited as they called my name. I waited as I accepted the blue ribbon, smiling for a camera that wasn't there. They never showed up. I found out later they'd been busy. My golden boy brother Marcus, only 4 years old at the time, had a casting call for a baby formula commercial. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, my mother Denise had gushed later that night, not even noticing the ribbon I'd quietly tucked into my backpack. Marcus didn't even get the part. It didn't matter. His potential failure was always more important than my actual success. I squeezed my eyes shut, pushing the memory away. That was then. This time was supposed to be different. This was Leo. This was their only grandchild. I had called Denise 3 times this week. "Mom, please," I'd begged just last night, hating the sound of my own voice. "This is important to him. He's counting on you." "Simone, stop being so dramatic." Her laugh crackled over the phone, sharp and dismissive. "Of course we'll be there. Lawrence and I wouldn't miss our little Leo's birthday. Marcus too. Leo is our little king. We'll be there at 5 on the dot." Her words had given me a dangerous, fragile hope. I'd spent all day baking those cupcakes, hanging those streamers, believing that this time they would finally show up. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over Denise's contact. Should I call again? Beg again? But I didn't have to. Just as I unlocked the screen, a notification popped up. A new post from my mother, Denise. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to look. I knew with a certainty that settled like lead in my gut. what it would be. But I couldn't stop myself. My finger tapped the Instagram icon. The screen refreshed. And there it was. Not a text message apologizing for being late. Not a missed call. It was a photo. My mother Denise had just posted it, tagged 5 minutes ago, the four of them. My father Lawrence smiling broadly in his expensive tailored suit. My mother Denise clinging to his arm dripping in jewelry. My brother Marcus looking polished and perfect in a custom blazer. And his fiancée Ashley, the wealthy white advertising executive, my parents adored, the one who worked in a real career. They were raising champagne glasses. They weren't stuck in traffic. They were at Aria, one of the most expensive restaurants in Atlanta, located in Buckhead. The caption underneath the glittering photo was the final twist of the knife. The caption in bright celebratory script floated over the image. A surprise celebration for my future master. So proud of our family's star at Marcus Davis. Congratulations, son. My stomach twisted. A surprise celebration. The photo was time-stamped 5 minutes ago. There they were, all four of them. My father Lawrence in his expensive suit raising a champagne flute, his expression stern but proud. My mother Denise wrapped in a fur stole I had never seen before, clinging to his arm and beaming. My brother Marcus looking polished and perfect in a custom blazer. And next to him his fiancée, Ashley. Ashley, the wealthy white advertising executive from a prominent family, the one my parents fawned over, the one who validated their climb into Atlanta's black elite. They were at Aria, in Buckhead. The glittering chandeliers in the background contrasted sharply with the drooping streamers in my own living room. They were not just late. They were not stuck in traffic. They had actively chosen this. They had lied. The promise to Leo, "We'll be there at 5 on the dot," was just something to say to get me off the phone. My hands were shaking. I looked from the phone screen to my son. He was still sitting at the table, patiently waiting for a family that was currently posting their happiness online, celebrating a future graduation that was not even happening today, while completely ignoring his present. I hit the call button for Denise. It rang once, twice. On the third ring, she picked up, her voice loud and slurred over the clinking of glasses. "Simone, honey, I cannot really talk." "Mom," I said, my voice tight. You are at Aria. I saw the picture. Leo is still waiting for you. We have been waiting for 2 hours." There was a muffled sound like she was covering the phone. I heard her laugh, a high-pitched titter. "Oh, honey, I am so sorry." Her voice was syrupy fake. It was a total surprise. Ashley insisted on taking Marcus out to celebrate his graduation. You know how important Ashley's parents are. We could not possibly say no. "Celebrate his graduation, Mom. His graduation is not for 3 months. Do not be difficult, Simone. It is the pre-celebration. And besides," her voice dropped, "Leo's party is it is so loud. All those kids. My nerves just could not take it today." Loud. The apartment was silent. "Mom," I whispered, the fight draining out of me. "He is 8. You promised him. Could you not have at least called? Could you not have just told him you were not coming?" This time, the sigh on the other end was heavy and patient. "Simone, honestly, you are being so selfish. It is just an 8th birthday party. It is not a real achievement. When you have something real to celebrate like your brother, then we can talk. Honestly, you need to stop making everything about you and Leo. We will send him a gift card online or something. I have to go. Ashley's father is telling a story." And just like that, she hung up. The click of the disconnected call echoed in the silent apartment. I lowered the phone. It is not a real achievement. The words bounced around my head, mixing with the memories of my own 10th birthday, my art prize, my college graduation that they had left early. All my not real achievements. I looked at Leo. He was watching me, his big brown eyes understanding far more than an 8-year-old should. He had heard the excuses. He had heard the dismissal. And now the tears he had been holding back finally began to fall. Not loud sobs, but silent, heartbreaking tears, that tracked down his cheeks and dripped onto his Spider-Man costume. That was it. That was the moment something in me, something that had been bent and bruised for 34 years, finally snapped. My whole life I had accepted the scraps they threw me. I had accepted being the less-than daughter, the disappointment, the charity case teacher, while they poured their love, their money, and their pride into Marcus. I had endured the public humiliations and the private dismissals. But I would not let them do this to my son. I would not let them teach him that he was not a real achievement. I crossed the room and knelt in front of him, wiping his tears with my thumbs. "Hey," I said, my voice suddenly strong, sharp, with a new cold determination. "You know what? This party is boring anyway. What do you say we go somewhere really fun?" Leo sniffled, looking confused. "Where? How about Disney World tomorrow?" His eyes went wide. But Mommy, you said we did not have enough money for that. You said we had to save." That was the lie I had been telling myself. That was the lie I had let them believe, that I was just struggling Simone, the poor relation. "I know what I said, baby." I smiled, a real smile this time, pulling him into a hug. "But Mommy just signed a huge contract for my art. A really, really big one. And I think we deserve to celebrate. Go pack your suitcase, the one with Mickey Mouse on it." "Really?" he whispered, hope dawning on his face. "Really," I confirmed. He shot off the chair and ran to his room, screaming with excitement. I stood up and walked to my laptop, which was sitting on the desk I used for my other work. I opened the browser. I ignored the emails from my normal teaching job. I ignored the bank account my family knew about, the one with $300 in it. Instead, I logged into the S Prime corporate account, the account that held the seven-figure deposits from my real job, the one I built in secret while they were ignoring me. I typed Delta Airlines into the search bar. 2 tickets to Orlando. Departing tomorrow morning. I clicked first class. "Consider this your gift, Denise," I whispered to the empty room as I entered my credit card number. "You just bought your grandson a trip to Disney World." The glow of the Disney World trip lasted for 3 whole days. My apartment, which had felt so gray and empty during Leo's lonely party, now felt bright. It smelled like popcorn and the faint, sweet scent of cotton candy from the souvenirs we'd unpacked. Leo was humming that annoying "It's a Small World" song as he zoomed his new toy monorail across the floor, finally looking like an 8-year-old boy again, his face bright with joy. "Mommy, when can we go back?" he asked, crashing the train harmlessly into my leg. "Soon, baby." I smiled. "Mommy just has to finish a new art project." I glanced at my laptop, my other laptop, the one I used for my real job. An email notification sat on the screen from the S Prime corporate account. A new deposit had just cleared, $150,000. My art project was paying off just fine. I had posted a few photos of Leo on my private Instagram. Leo hugging Mickey Mouse, Leo with his face covered in chocolate ice cream. I did it just for me, just to remember the look on his face. I noticed with a kind of detached coldness that neither my parents nor Marcus had liked or commented on the pictures. They hadn't acknowledged the trip at all. Good, I thought. It's easier this way. My phone buzzed on the counter, a text message. I picked it up, expecting a notification from Leo's school or a work email. Instead, I saw my father's name, Lawrence. My stomach instantly tightened. My father never texted unless it was a command, a summons, or a complaint. My brief moment of peace vanished. I opened the message. It was long, typed out with the stiff formality of a business directive. "Simone, we held a family meeting this evening to discuss Marcus's upcoming graduation. We have decided that every family member, and that includes you, will be contributing $3,500. This will cover the venue deposit, the catering, and a substantial graduation gift for your brother. This contribution is mandatory. Ashley's mother has already pledged $10,000, and we cannot let her family show us up. We need to present a unified, successful front. Please transfer the funds to your mother's account by Friday." My hand went numb. I had to read the message again. $3,500. Mandatory. The word mandatory echoed in my head loud as a gunshot. It punched the air from my lungs and sent me spiraling back 3 years. It was a Tuesday, 2 o'clock in the morning. Leo was wheezing. Not his normal manageable asthma wheeze, but a high-pitched whistling sound that sounded like a dying bird. The air was getting trapped in his tiny chest. His home nebulizer wasn't working. I had rushed him to the 24-hour urgent care, my heart pounding against my ribs, faster than the windshield wipers in the rain. The diagnosis was severe, a respiratory infection, borderline pneumonia. He needed oxygen immediately, a steroid shot, and a specialist inhaler that the pharmacy charged $500 for. $500? I didn't have it. My part-time teacher's salary barely covered our rent and utilities. S-Prime was just a dream back then, a few $50 commissions on the side that bought groceries. My one credit card was maxed out from paying for the last medical bill. I stood under the harsh fluorescent lights of the pharmacy, my voice shaking as I called my father. "Dad, I am so sorry to call this late," I'd whispered, trying not to cry. "Leo, he's sick. He can't breathe right. The medicine is $500. I don't get paid until next week. Can you please help me? I swear I'll pay you back on Friday." The silence on the other end of the line felt like an eternity. Then his voice came cold and heavy with disappointment. $500, Simone, really? When are you going to learn to manage your finances? This is what happens. This is the consequence of your poor life choices. You chose this life. You chose to have a child you cannot afford. You chose that pointless art job. You cannot expect your mother and me to be your emergency fund forever. He hung up. I remembered sliding down the pharmacy wall, the phone still pressed to my ear, feeling utterly, completely broken. I had to beg the pharmacist, a kind woman who saw my terror, to give me the medicine. I promised to come back the next day. I had to pawn the only piece of jewelry I owned, my own grandmother's locket, to pay her back. My father, Lawrence, had refused $500 to help his grandson breathe. And now, he was demanding $3,500 for a party, to protect his image, to impress Ashley's rich parents, to celebrate the golden boy who had never worked a day in his life that wasn't subsidized by my parents. The hypocrisy was so profound, so suffocating, it almost made me laugh. It was a cold, bitter sound that bubbled up in my chest. "Mandatory," I whispered to the empty room. The old hurt, the familiar sting of rejection was gone. It was replaced by something cold, something hard, something that felt like resolve. I picked up my phone, my hand perfectly steady. I tapped open the Venmo app. I was done being the family failure. I was done being their afterthought. Oh, I was going to send them a transfer, all right. But it was not going to be the one they were expecting. I picked up my phone, my hand perfectly steady. The anger from the Disney World trip was gone. It had burned away, leaving something cold and sharp in its place. It was the kind of clarity that comes when you have finally completely run out of second chances to give to people who do not deserve them. I tapped the Venmo app. It opened instantly. My mother's name, Denise Davis, sat at the top of my list. I tapped her picture. The app asked for the amount. I typed in the number. 2, not 200, not 20, just the number 2. My fingers moved to the "what's it for" line. I thought for a moment, wanting the message to be perfect. I wanted it to sting in a way they wouldn't understand until it was much, much too late. I typed, "Here is $2. Best of luck to Marcus on his graduation." I paused. I needed one more thing, a signature, a mark that meant nothing to them but everything to me. I added the name I had built in the shadows, the name that paid for Disney World, the name that paid for my son's medical bills, the name they had never ever bothered to ask about. I typed -S prime. They wouldn't know what S prime meant. To them, it would just look like another piece of my bizarre artistic nonsense, another layer of my failure. Good. I stared at the screen. The blue pay button pulsed softly. I pressed it. The blue bar shot across the screen. Payment sent. I set the phone down on the counter. I did not have to wait long. It might have been 10 seconds. 10 seconds before my phone lit up, vibrating so hard against the laminate countertop it sounded like an angry bee. The caller ID was Lawrence. I smiled. I took a deep breath, picked up the phone, and tapped the speaker button. "What the hell are you doing?" The roar was so loud that Leo, playing with his monorail in the living room, actually jumped and looked over at me. I gave him a reassuring wave. My father was not speaking. He was screaming. It was the voice he used when one of his business deals went south. The voice that used to make me hide in my closet as a child. The voice that meant he had lost control. "I am not sure what you mean, Dad," I said. My voice was ice. $2. You sent your mother $2. Are you insane? Are you trying to disrespect this family after everything we have done for you? "I just made a contribution," I said calmly, walking to the sink to rinse my coffee cup. "I sent what I felt the occasion was worth. I am very busy right now, Dad. I have to get ready to teach my class." "Teach." I heard him sputter on the other end. "You are going to talk to me about that stupid art class, that finger painting nonsense you do for pocket money." He was pacing. I could hear his heavy, expensive shoes on their polished hardwood floors. "Your brother is graduating with a Master of Business Administration from Emory University. He is the future of this family. He is building on my legacy. And you—" He actually choked on his rage. You are an embarrassment. You are a 34-year-old failure playing with crayons, and you have the nerve to be disrespectful." I waited, letting his words hang in the air. The silence hummed for a second. "Are you done?" I asked. "Do not talk back to me, Simone. You will transfer the full amount, $3,500, by the end of the day, or there will be consequences." "I do not have $3,500 to waste on a party, Dad," I said. The lie tasted easy now. "I have rent to pay. I have to take care of my son. You know, actual responsibilities." I heard him stop pacing. I had said the magic word. "Rent," he said. His voice dropped from a roar to a low, dangerous growl. "Rent. That is good. I am glad you brought that up." I knew what was coming. This was his checkmate. The one card he had left to play, the one string he still had attached to me, the one he used to remind me that I was nothing without him. "You seem to forget, Simone, that your art teacher salary was not good enough for any landlord in this city. You seem to forget who had to step in, who had to co-sign that lease for that dump of an apartment so you and your kid wouldn't be homeless." "I remember," I said. "Good. Because I am looking at my phone right now. I am about to call that landlord, Mr. Henderson. I am going to tell him I am pulling my signature and my financial guarantee. Effective immediately. I am going to tell him his tenant is unstable, disrespectful, and probably about to be unemployed for all I know." "Dad, do not do this." "You send that money," he roared. "You send the full $3,500 by 5 p.m. today. You send it, and you apologize to your mother. If I do not see that money in her account, I am making that call. And you and Leo will be on the street by tomorrow morning. Am I clear?" He did not wait for an answer. The line clicked. He had hung up. I stood there in my kitchen. The threat hung in the air, heavy and toxic. He would do it. I knew he would. He would make his own daughter and his only grandson homeless. All to prove a point. All to fund a party for his favorite child. The old Simone, the one from just a week ago, would have panicked. She would have cried. She would have called her S-Prime accountant, desperately trying to liquidate funds, trying to meet the impossible deadline. But I just stood there. I looked at the phone, and I started to laugh. It was a strange, rusty sound at first, but it felt good. "Oh, Dad," I said to the empty room, a wide smile spreading across my face. "You really, really should have checked your records first." Lawrence did not wait. He stabbed the number for the apartment management into his phone, his face flushed with the righteous fury of a man about to bring down the hammer. He put the call on speaker so Denise and Marcus could enjoy the show. "Henderson Property Management, this is Bill," a professional voice answered. "Put Henderson on the line," Lawrence commanded. He did not say please. There was a click and then another voice, drier and older. "This is Mr. Henderson." "Henderson," my father boomed, leaning back in his leather office chair. "Lawrence Davis here. I am calling about the lease for apartment 3B Simone Davis. I am her co-signer." Denise smirked at Marcus, who was leaning against the desk, arms crossed, looking bored and superior. "Yes, Mr. Davis. How can I help you?" "I am officially informing you," Lawrence said, savoring each word, "that I am withdrawing my name and my financial guarantee from that lease, effective immediately. The tenant has violated our family agreement, and I will no longer be responsible for her." He smiled, waiting for the panic from the other end. There was none, just a beat of confused silence. "I am sorry, Mr. Davis. Who are you referring to again?" My father's smile faltered, his brow furrowed in annoyance. "Simone Davis, apartment 3B, the tenant you would not approve without my credit. Do not waste my time, Henderson. Just get it done. I want her out." "Mr. Davis," Henderson said, his voice still professional, but now laced with confusion. "I am looking at the file for 3B right now. I am not sure what you mean. Your name is not on this lease." The blood drained from my father's face. Denise's smirk vanished. "What do you mean, not on the lease?" Lawrence barked. "I signed the papers myself 2 years ago." "Yes," Mr. Henderson said patiently, "you did. But that lease expired 6 months ago. Your name was removed at that time." "Removed?" My father looked like he had been slapped. "Who removed it? She could not have done it without my signature." "She did not need it, Mr. Davis. She did not renew the old lease." Henderson explained, the sound of keyboard clacking coming through the phone. "Ms. Davis signed an entirely new lease, under her own name." Lawrence was speechless. He just stared at the phone. Denise lunged forward and snatched the phone from his hand. "Listen to me," she hissed. "This is Denise Davis." "That is impossible. Simone's credit is terrible. She is just a part-time art teacher. She has no income. She could never qualify for that apartment on her own." There was a cold pause on the other end of the line. When Mr. Henderson spoke again, all traces of politeness were gone. He sounded deeply offended. "Ma'am," he said, his voice dropping, "I do not know what personal issues you have with your daughter, but I can assure you Ms. Davis's credit is perfect. Her score was over 800. She provided 3 years of tax returns that were, well, let's just say more than sufficient." Denise's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "And frankly," Mr. Henderson continued, his voice dripping with annoyance, "I wish all my tenants were like Ms. Davis. She paid for the entire 12-month lease, up front, with a single check." Lawrence stammered, finding his voice. "A single check?" "That is correct, Mr. Davis. A corporate check, to be precise. From her company, S Prime Designs, LLC. Now, if you will excuse me, I am very busy. Ms. Davis's tenancy is not your concern. Have a wonderful day." The line went dead. The click of the disconnected call was the loudest sound in the room. Marcus, who had been slouched against the desk, was now standing straight. "S Prime Designs. What the hell is that?" Denise looked at her husband, her eyes wide with a new kind of panic. "Lawrence, a company check. She paid for the whole year." My father Lawrence just stared at the wall. The power he thought he held, the string he had been so eager to pull, was not just cut. He had never even been holding it. "Where?" he finally whispered, his voice hoarse with a confusion that went far beyond money. "Where did she get a company?" The drive to Simone's apartment was thick with a self-righteous fury. Lawrence gripped the steering wheel of his Mercedes, his knuckles white. "A corporate check." He kept muttering, the words tasting like acid. "She has been lying to us for years." Beside him, Denise was already spinning the narrative, building the case for her own victimhood. She did it to embarrass me, Lawrence. She knew Ashley was there. She knew Marcus's graduation was important. This, this S-prime nonsense. It is just another way for her to be difficult. She has always been jealous of her brother. She is not just difficult, Denise. She is deceitful. Lawrence corrected, his voice hard. She has been playing us. Playing the poor, struggling teacher while God knows what she has been doing to get that kind of money. Denise nodded, fanning her face, though the air conditioning was blasting. It is probably something illegal. Or immoral. You do not just suddenly have perfect credit and a company. She has gotten herself into trouble. I know it. And now she is lashing out at us. By the time they turned onto Simone's street, they had worked themselves into a state of pure indignation. They were not just confused parents. They were wronged parents. They were going to march up to that apartment and demand the truth. They were going to put an end to this charade, whatever it was. But the scene that greeted them stopped their story cold. There was no sign of Simone's beat-up sedan. Instead, parked in front of her building was a massive gleaming white truck. It was not a U-Haul. It was not a budget rental. Emblazoned on the side in elegant deep blue script were the words, King's Cross Shippers, White Glove Relocations. This was the company that had moved the CEO of Lawrence's firm. This was the company that handled museum pieces. What on earth? Denise whispered, her anger momentarily forgotten, replaced by sheer confusion. Two men in crisp dark blue uniforms emerged from the building lobby. They were not sweaty day laborers. They were professionals. And they were carrying with extreme care a long, low-slung velvet sofa in a deep emerald green. It was a piece that looked like it belonged in an issue of Architectural Digest. Lawrence and Denise just sat in the car, frozen. Then another man came out, this one carrying a large framed piece of abstract art. It was vibrant and complex, and even from the car it looked expensive. This could not be apartment 3B. This was a mistake. Then they saw her, Simone. She was not hiding. She was not crying. She was standing by the truck wearing large chic sunglasses, a black turtleneck and tailored pants. She held a clipboard and she was directing the movers with the calm, efficient authority of a project manager. She looked powerful. This was not the daughter they knew. Denise got out of the car, her confusion quickly curdling back into anger. This was a show. Simone was putting on a show to spite them. Simone. Denise's voice was sharp, cutting through the quiet morning air. What is all this? What are you doing? Simone turned slowly. The movers paused, looking from Denise to Simone. Simone simply raised a hand, and they continued their work, disappearing into the truck. I asked you a question, young lady, Denise snapped, marching over. What is the meaning of this? Who is paying for all this? My God, Simone, what kind of debt have you gotten yourself into this time? Simone pushed her sunglasses up onto her head. Her eyes were calm. There were no tears, no fear. I am not in debt, Mom, she said, her voice even. I am moving. Lawrence had gotten out of the car, now slamming the door. His face was thunderous. Moving. You are not moving anywhere. You do not just get to disrespect your family, lie about your money, and then run away. Simone actually smiled, a small, cold smile that did not reach her eyes. I am not running away, Dad, and I do not need your permission. My lease is up. Upgrading, Lawrence scoffed, the sound echoing in the street. Upgrading to what, a 2-bedroom in a slightly less terrible neighborhood? You cannot afford it. Whatever little nest egg you have, you are blowing it on this performance. He gestured wildly at the expensive truck at the velvet sofa. This is pathetic, Simone, even for you. Simone looked at him. She just held his gaze for a long moment. The woman who used to flinch, who used to look at the ground, was gone. I am upgrading, she said, her voice perfectly clear. I am moving to Collier Heights. Silence. The words just hung in the air. Lawrence's mouth, which had been open to deliver another insult, snapped shut. Denise just froze her hand halfway to her pearls. Collier Heights. Not just any neighborhood. The neighborhood. The historic, wealthy, exclusive black enclave of Atlanta. The place where doctors and lawyers and old money families lived. The place their family, with all their buckhead posturing, had never been able to break into. Collier, Denise finally stammered. Collier Heights. Like the Collier Heights, with the historic homes. Lawrence just stared at her. His mind, so quick to calculate and command, was visibly struggling to compute this new impossible data. That is not possible, he said, his voice flat. A house there costs $1 million, Simone. At least. Simone just looked at him. The smile never left her face. She turned as one of the movers brought out the last large piece of art. Be careful with that one, she said to him. It is an original. Denise grabbed her arm, her fingers digging in. How, Simone? Tell me, how is this possible? Simone looked down at her mother's hand on her arm. She waited until Denise, unnerved by the cold stare, let go. I got a discount, Simone said. The 20-minute drive to Collier Heights was the longest of my father's life. He gripped the wheel of his Mercedes, his jaw clenched. Beside him, Denise sat bolt upright, her hands clutching her designer handbag so tightly her knuckles were white. In the back seat, Marcus had finally put his phone down. The three of them stared at the gleaming white moving truck as it navigated the pristine tree-lined streets. It is a mistake, Denise said, her voice thin. She is visiting someone. She is not. It is not possible. She is involved in something. Lawrence growled, his face dark. Drugs, laundering money, something illegal. That is the only way. A woman like her does not just... Look, Marcus said, pointing. The truck was slowing. It signaled, then turned smoothly into the driveway of a house that made Denise let out a small, strangled gasp. It was not just a house. It was an architectural statement. A sprawling, low-profile, mid-century modern, renovated to immaculate perfection. Walls of glass, a roofline that seemed to float, manicured gardens that looked like they belonged in a magazine. It sat on a gentle slope, overlooking a wide, green park. It was the kind of house that did not scream money. It whispered wealth. It whispered taste. The moving truck stopped, the movers got out, and then Simone's old beat-up sedan pulled up right behind them. She got out of the driver's seat wearing those same sunglasses, that same calm expression. She looked at her new home and nodded as if she was simply checking on groceries. That was what broke them. The three of them scrambled out of the Mercedes before Lawrence had even put the car in park. They stormed across the perfect zoysia grass, a unified front of complete and utter disbelief. Simone! Lawrence shouted. The name echoed in the quiet, wealthy street. Simone turned to face them as the movers began lowering the ramp of the truck. Explain this! Lawrence demanded, his voice shaking with rage. Explain it, right now. Simone simply raised an eyebrow. Explain what, Dad? It is a moving day. It is usually pretty chaotic. Do not play dumb with me, he roared, jabbing a finger toward the stunning house. This! How did you get this? What did you do? We know what you are. You are a part-time art teacher. You are a failure. We know what you make. His face was turning a deep, dangerous red. The accusations came spilling out, the ones they had been whispering in the car. Who are you sleeping with, Simone? Who is paying for this? Did you find some rich old man to buy you a house? Did you blackmail someone? Because I know you did not earn this. It was the ultimate insult. The only way his daughter, his failure, could possibly achieve this level of success was on her back or through a crime. Denise jumped in, her voice shrill, seeing her own social standing crumble in real time. Your father is right. You are embarrassing us. You must be in some terrible trouble. You have been lying to us, deceiving your own family, pretending to be poor. What did you do? Marcus, who had been hanging back by their car with a smirk, finally chimed in. His voice was lazy, dripping with the sarcasm he had perfected over a lifetime of being the favorite. "Come on, sis. Be honest," he drawled, pushing himself off the car. "Looks like those little art classes finally paid off, did they not? Guess you finally found your true talent." The air crackled. The movers had stopped sensing the danger and were now watching the family meltdown with professional disinterest. Simone looked at them one by one. She looked at her mother's twisted face. She looked at her father's bulging eyes. She looked at her brother's lazy, insulting smirk. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were not angry. They were not hurt. They were bored. "You are right, Marcus," she said. Her voice was clear and cool, cutting through their hysteria like glass. "My art is very useful." Just as she spoke, a car door hummed shut behind them. They all turned. A gleaming black Tesla Model S, silent as a shadow, had pulled into the driveway right behind Lawrence's Mercedes. A woman stepped out. She was sharp blonde and wearing a crisp white blazer, her heels clicking on the pavement. It was Ashley, Marcus's fiancée, the wealthy, successful advertising executive from the Wright family. She looked surprised, adjusting her own designer sunglasses as she stared at the moving truck, then at Simone, then at her future in-laws standing on the lawn like a lynch mob. "Marcus," she said, her voice sharp with confusion. "What on earth are you doing here?" The arrival of the Tesla Model S was like a splash of ice water. The humming sound of its electric engine was the only noise in the sudden tense silence. My father Lawrence froze, his mouth still open from his last insult. My mother Denise just stared. Marcus looked like he had seen a ghost. His entire body went rigid. Ashley," he stammered, his voice cracking. "Baby, what? What are you doing here, Ashley?" His fiancée, the picture of buckhead perfection in her white blazer, stepped onto the perfect lawn. She took off her expensive sunglasses and stared at the scene. She looked from the massive moving truck to the velvet sofa on the curb to my parents standing like angry statues, and finally to me. There was no recognition in her eyes, just confusion. She ignored Marcus and walked directly to me. "Excuse me," she said, her voice crisp and professional. "I must have the wrong—" Wait, the email said, "Is this the S Prime studio?" I felt a slow smile spread across my face. This was a complication I had not anticipated, but it was a delicious one. "Yes," I said calmly. "I'm S Prime. You must be Ashley." Ashley's perfectly painted mouth dropped open. She looked from me, the failure art teacher, to the stunning house, and back to me. I do not understand. My boss. We..." She looked over at her fiancé, Marcus. The color had drained from my brother's face. S Prime," he echoed, his voice barely a whisper. "What are you talking about?" My mother Denise finally found her voice. She stepped forward, trying to regain control. "Ashley, honey, you must be mistaken. This is Simone. This is our daughter. S Prime. What is that? Some kind of nickname." Ashley's head snapped back to my mother. The look in her eyes was one I recognized well. It was the look of a high-powered executive realizing they have walked into a complete mess. "Mrs. Davis," Ashley said, her voice suddenly cold. "S Prime is..." "She is the artist. She is the graphic designer my agency has been trying to sign for a year. She is the one who designed the entire Global Synergy campaign for our biggest client." She turned back to me, her eyes wide with a dawning, horrified realization. You are S Prime," she whispered. "The one who... My boss. My boss flew from New York just to have dinner with you last month. That was the dinner I had regrettably canceled due to a scheduling conflict." "That is me," I confirmed. Denise let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. "That is ridiculous. Simone." "Our Simone." She is a part-time art teacher. She failed at everything, Lawrence tell her. This is insane. But my father was not listening. He was staring at the house. He was staring at the Tesla. He was staring at his son's fiancée, who was now looking at me with a mixture of awe and terror. He saw his perfect narrative, his perfect failing daughter, and his perfect successful son all shattering at his feet. And he snapped. I do not care. He roared, his voice breaking with pure, unfiltered rage. I do not care what fake name you call yourself. I do not care what lies you told this woman. He lunged forward, actually shoving Ashley aside. She stumbled back, shocked, catching herself on the hood of her own car. You have been deceiving this family! Lawrence bellowed, his face a mask of fury. You stole money, you are a liar and a failure, and I am going to find out what is going on in that house. He stormed up the walkway and began pounding on the expensive custom-made front door with both fists. Open this door. Simone, open it right now. I am still your father. You will answer to me. Dad, stop, I shouted, more out of instinct than anything. Lawrence, my God. My mother shrieked, finally realizing how this looked. The neighbors. But he was beyond reason. He grabbed the handle and yanked, rattling the entire frame. I am getting in this house, you hear me? You cannot hide from me. It was ugly. It was violent. It was desperate. Marcus! Denise screamed at her son, who was still frozen by the car. Do something! Stop your father! Marcus took one step forward, then stopped. He looked at his father, a man he had never defied. He looked at his fiancée, who was watching him with a look of pure disgust. He looked at me, the sister he had despised, who was now impossibly at the center of all this power. He did nothing. And as my father raised his fist to pound on the glass panel beside the door, another sound cut through the air. A siren. Not one siren. Two. Two police cars, black and white, rounded the quiet corner of the picturesque park. They slowed, then accelerated, their lights flashing as they pulled up to the curb, pinning my father, my mother, and my brother in the bright, undeniable glare of the law. The flashing blue and red lights painted the perfect facade of the house. Lawrence actually felt a wave of profound relief. He dropped his fists from the door and turned, composing his face into a mask of worried, responsible fatherhood. He even managed a small, appreciative smile for the officers as they stepped onto the lawn. Officer, thank God you are here, he said, stepping forward, already taking charge. Denise rushed to his side, arranging her face into a similar mask of distress. It is our daughter, Lawrence said, his voice grave. She is unstable. He lowered his voice conspiratorially. She has been having financial trouble. We came here to help her and she is not herself. She locked herself in this house. We are not even sure how she afforded it. We are just terribly worried about her. He pointed at me, Simone, as I finally stepped out onto the porch, clipboard still in hand. See, she is delusional. She needs help. The lead officer, a tall black woman in her 40s, did not look at me. Her name tag read, Harris. Her eyes were fixed squarely on my father. She did not look sympathetic. She looked tired. She slowly, deliberately put her hand on the grip of her holstered sidearm. Not to draw it, but as a gesture of pure authority. Sir, she said, her voice deep and clear, I need you to take your hands off the door and step back onto the public sidewalk, now. Lawrence's smile faltered. He was not used to being given orders. Officer, I think you misunderstand. I am the one who needs assistance. She is the problem. Officer Harris took one step closer. The neighbors were definitely watching now. Mrs. Abernathy from 2 doors down was peering through her blinds. The Johnsons next door were standing right on their porch. This was exactly the audience my father dreaded. Sir, you are the problem right now. Officer Harris stated, her voice leaving no room for argument. We did not receive a call from you. We received a call about you. My father's face went blank. What? We received a dispatch call regarding a domestic disturbance and trespassing. The homeowner reported that her estranged father, mother, and brother were on her property, refusing to leave and attempting to forcibly enter the residence. Homeowner. Denise whispered the word sounding foreign. No, that is a mistake. We are the... Officer Harris turned her gaze to me, standing calmly on the porch. Are you Ms. Simone Davis? I nodded, stepping forward into the light. I am. Thank you for coming, Officer Harris. I am sorry to have bothered you, but they were frightening my moving team and my father was trying to break my door. Officer Harris nodded, then turned back to my father. Mr. Davis, is this your property? Well, no, but... Then you are trespassing, she said flatly. The homeowner has asked you to leave. I am now instructing you to leave. If you set foot on this property again without her explicit invitation, you will be arrested. Am I clear? The scene was pure, agonizing humiliation. My father, Lawrence Davis, a pillar of the Atlanta community, was being dressed down by a cop on the lawn of a $1 million house in Collier Heights in front of these neighbors. Denise looked like she was going to faint. She was clutching her pearls, her face pale as ash. This is a family misunderstanding. Lawrence stammered, his authority completely gone. Family misunderstandings do not involve pounding on doors and terrifying people, Officer Harris said. Get in your car and go home. My father looked at me, his eyes filled with a new burning hatred. I just looked back, my expression calm. I did not have to say a word. The entire neighborhood, the police, and most importantly, Ashley saw exactly what he was. As my parents and a shell-shocked Marcus did the walk of shame back to their Mercedes, Ashley, who had been watching the entire exchange in silence, finally moved. She did not look at me. She did not look at the cops. She walked straight to Marcus, who was fumbling with his car keys. Wait, she said, her voice dangerously quiet. Marcus froze, his hand on the door handle. Ashley, baby, let's just go. We can talk about this later. No, she said. We will talk about this now. You told me your sister was a failure. You told me she was a charity case. You told me she was a part-time art teacher living in a dump that your father had to co-sign for. She pointed one perfectly manicured finger at my stunning architect-designed house. Does that look like a dump to you, Marcus? She looked at me, really seeing me for the first time. You told me she was socially awkward and unstable. She just stood there and faced down your entire family and the police without blinking. She took a step back, the realization hitting her. You did not just lie about her, Marcus. You lied about everything. Your whole family. You are all frauds. Marcus just stared at her, his mouth opening and closing. The golden boy had lost his shine. And I knew right then that my brother's carefully constructed future had just imploded. Mr. Graves's office was exactly what I expected. Dark wood, leather-bound books, and a faint smell of old cigars and condescension. It was my father's territory, his sanctuary of power. He, my mother, and Marcus were already seated around the massive mahogany conference table when I walked in. They looked exhausted but defiant. Marcus stared at the table, his face sullen. My mother was fidgeting with the clasp on her pearls. My father sat stiff as a statue, his hands clasped, radiating pure, cold anger. They were here to put me back in my box. Mr. Graves, a man who had known me since I was a child, did not stand. He just motioned to the empty chair at the far end of the table. The failure seat. The seat for the person about to be lectured. I ignored it. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and stood looking down at the Atlanta skyline, my arms crossed. I let the silence stretch out. I let them wait for me. Finally, Mr. Graves began, his voice a smooth, practiced baritone. He was the family fixer, the one who cleaned up their messes. Simone, he said, his tone oozing false concern. Thank you for coming in. Your family, well, they are very concerned about you. I almost laughed. Concerned, is that what we are calling it now? My mother Denise dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. A perfect performance. We are worried, Simone. This behavior, it is not you. This new house, the police, this... this S-prime personality. It is like you are a different person. You are right about that, Mom, I said, my voice flat. The daughter you raised would have apologized for taking up space. Mr. Graves cleared his throat, trying to steer the conversation back to his script. Simone, the incident at your new home a few days ago was unfortunate. Deeply unfortunate. You embarrassed your parents. You embarrassed your entire family in front of their community, in front of Miss Ashley's family. Ah, there it was. The real problem. Not the police, but the witnesses. My father Lawrence finally spoke. His voice was low and controlled the voice he used when he was moments from exploding. You made your point, Simone. You proved you have a fancy house and a new job. Congratulations. You won. He leaned forward, his knuckles white on the polished table. Now it is time to stop. This public spectacle ends today. You are dragging the Davis family name through the mud. People are talking. The partners at my firm are talking. The board at the club, the foundation, they are all talking. You are ruining your brother's future. You are ruining our reputation. Reputation. That was the only thing he had ever truly loved. I turned from the window to face them. The three of them staring at me, expecting me to finally crumble under the combined weight of their disappointment and his authority. They had summoned me here to shame me, to leverage the power of their lawyer, their status, their disappointment, to make me be quiet. My reputation, I repeated slowly, or Marcus's reputation. My father scowled. It is the family reputation, Simone. Something you have never understood. It is about all of us. No, I said, my voice cutting through the heavy air. I do not think it is. I am not here to talk about reputation. I am not here to talk about making a point. I am not here to talk about me at all. I walked forward, placing my hands on the back of the empty chair I was supposed to have taken. I am here to talk about money. The shift in the room was electric. Marcus, who had been trying to blend into the wallpaper, flinched. Money, my mother said, her voice weak. Simone, this is not the time to be petty about that 3,000. Not 3,000, Mom. I am here to talk about $250,000. Lawrence stared at me. I do not know what you are talking about. Do not you? I smiled. That is all right. I have someone who can explain it. I looked at Mr. Graves. Thank you for hosting us, Mr. Graves. I appreciate you letting us use your conference room, but I do not think you are my lawyer. Mr. Graves looked confused. Simone, I have handled your family's affairs for 20 years. Exactly, I said. You have handled my father's affairs, my affairs. Well, they require someone different. I turned to the door. You can come in now. The conference room door opened, and in walked Alana Washington. Lawrence's face went from angry to ashen. Denise let out a small gasp. Alana Washington was not just a lawyer, she was the lawyer in Atlanta. A high-powered, brilliant, undefeated prosecutor turned corporate litigator. She was famous for dismantling corrupt corporations and winning impossible cases. She was a shark, and she was my shark. Alana, my father stammered. What is she doing here? Alana Washington walked to the table, placed her leather briefcase down with a sharp thud, and looked at my father with eyes that could freeze fire. Mr. Davis, she said, her voice like silk and steel. I am here representing my client, Simone Davis, in the matter of felony grand theft and wire fraud, perpetrated by you. Mr. Graves, the family lawyer, looked like he had swallowed a wasp. He stared at Alana Washington, this powerful, legendary woman who had just invaded his sacred space. He tried to puff up to regain control. Alana, this is highly irregular. This is a private family matter. I must ask you to— You will not ask me to do anything, Donald. Alana cut him off, her voice smooth as velvet but hard as diamond. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. You are Mr. Davis's attorney. I am Ms. Davis's. We are now in a legal meeting. Please sit. Mr. Graves incredibly sat. He looked like a puppet whose strings had just been cut. Alana placed a slim, elegant folder on the table. She opened it and looked directly at my father. Mr. Davis, she began. We are here to discuss a demand for $3,500 you made to my client, Ms. Simone Davis, under threat of having her evicted from her residence. A residence, I might add, that you held no legal authority over. My father Lawrence found his voice. It was shaky, but he was trying to bluster. That was a family contribution. For my son's graduation, it has nothing to do with you. On the contrary, Alana said, it has everything to do with me, because my client, Ms. Davis, has reason to believe that demand was not for a graduation party. It was, in fact, an act of extortion. The room was so quiet I could hear the air conditioning hum. I stepped forward, finally taking my place at the table. I sat directly across from my father, my hands folded calmly on the polished mahogany. I have to admit, Dad, I said, my voice clear, you almost had me. The mandatory contribution, the threat of homelessness, it was all very dramatic. Simone, you will stop this, he began. No, I interrupted. You will listen. I turned to Alana. Thank you, Alana. I think I can take it from here. Alana gave me a small approving nod and sat back, a silent, powerful guardian. I looked at my family. When you, I pointed to my father, threatened to make me and my son homeless over $3,500, I knew something was very, very wrong. You are obsessed with money, Dad, but you are not stupid. You would not risk that kind of public explosion over a party contribution. So, I continued, I did something I learned from you. I protected my assets. I hired a professional. I hired a private investigator. Denise let out a small, horrified gasp. A private investigator, Simone? How could you, spying on your own family? I was not spying, Mom. I was investigating a threat, and what I found was, well, it was more than I ever expected. I leaned forward. I know the $3,500 was not for a party. I know it was not for Ashley's parents. I know it was a payment, an urgent payment to a bookie in Las Vegas. Marcus, who had been trying to look invisible, went rigid. His face turned a sick, grayish color. You are lying, my father stammered, but his eyes darted to Marcus. The denial was weak. He knew. Of course he knew. Am I pressed. Or is this the lie, this whole Golden Boy MBA story, the future of the family? Because my investigator was very thorough. I said, my voice dropping. The $3,500 was not the debt. Was it, Marcus? It was just the minimum payment, the late fee, the little bit of money to stop the men from breaking your kneecaps. The real debt. The one you have been hiding for 5 years. I paused. I let the silence hang. The real debt, I said, looking right at my father, is $350,000. The room exploded. It was Ashley who screamed first. A real guttural scream of pure, unadulterated horror. What? She shrieked, jumping to her feet so fast her chair toppled over backward. 300,000, Marcus. Marcus was shaking his head in his hands. It is not that bad. She is lying, Ashley, she is lying. Am I shot back. Or is this just the tip of the iceberg, the credit card debt, the secret loans, the second mortgage you... I turned to my father. Took out on the family house last year, the house you just told me I was ruining the reputation of. Denise was the next to break. You dare, she shrieked, lunging across the table. You dare to spy on us, to dig into our private lives. You ungrateful, evil girl, you are trying to destroy your brother. I am not destroying him, Mom, I said, my voice rising to meet hers. I am just trying to understand why this family, my family, would be so desperate for my money that you would threaten to make your own grandson homeless. I was just trying to figure out what was so important that you would rather destroy me than ask me for help. I looked at all of them, their faces a canvas of guilt, rage, and shock. But that is not even the worst part, I said, my voice suddenly quiet again. They all froze. Even Denise stopped her hysterics. That is not the worst part, I repeated. The worst part is that as I was digging, I figured out where you got the money to cover his debts for all these years. I figured out why you were so desperate to get more. I figured out where my money went. My money? I said, my voice cutting through the silence. The money you have already stolen from me. My father Lawrence actually laughed. A short, ugly barking sound. Stolen. What are you talking about? We have never taken a dime from you. We are the ones who have been supporting your failures. No, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. You have been financing his. I pointed a finger at Marcus. With my money. I looked at my mother, Denise. Her face was a mask of confusion. Mom, do you remember Grandma Davis's will? Your own mother's will? Of course I do, Denise said, her voice dripping with condescension. She left the house to us, and she left some money for you and Marcus. She left $500,000, I said, letting the number land in the center of the table like a bomb. In a trust, to be split evenly between me and Marcus, to be paid out on our 25th birthdays. Yes, my father said, jumping in. He was trying to regain control. And we told you about that, Simone. We told you years ago. You forfeited your share. You were irresponsible. You dropped out of school. You had a child out of wedlock. The terms of the trust were clear. Your grandmother did not want her legacy wasted on a lifestyle like yours. Your share went to Marcus, who was actually earning it. He sat back, his arms crossed. He had said his piece. He thought this was over. He thought his word was law. That is a very interesting story, Dad, I said. I reached down to the leather briefcase Alana had placed by my chair. I clicked it open. It is a very compelling narrative. The responsible parents, the wayward daughter, the deserving son. I pulled out a thick, bound document. The only problem, I said, sliding it onto the polished mahogany, is that it is a complete and total lie. I tapped the cover. This is the original notarized trust document from Grandma Davis. I got a copy from the county probate court. I have read it. Alana has read it. And you know what is not in here? I leaned forward. There are no lifestyle clauses. There are no responsibility requirements. It was $500,000 split in two, payable on our 25th birthdays. No conditions, no exceptions. My father's face went white. Mr. Graves, the family lawyer, suddenly looked like he was going to be sick. He knew. He had probably helped draft the lie. You told me I forfeited it, I said, my voice shaking with a rage I had held in for 6 years. You told me I signed papers agreeing to it. You did, my father stammered. We showed you. No, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. I did not. I pulled out a second, even thicker document. This is a report from a forensic accountant. I looked at my mother. You see, Mom, I kept wondering, how did you pay for Marcus's first gambling debt? The one 5 years ago, right after I turned 26, the $50,000 one. You did not have that kind of money just lying around. I opened the report. You did not, but I did. I turned the page and slid it across the table so my father could see. This is a withdrawal form from my trust fund for $250,000, dated 6 years ago, 1 week after my 25th birthday. My mother was shaking her head. I do not. And this, I said, pointing to the bottom line, is my signature. Or at least it is a very, very good forgery of my signature. The air left the room. It was not a family matter anymore. This was a crime. You stole my inheritance, I whispered, the words tasting like poison. You stole $250,000 from me. You faked my signature. You emptied my account. You took my grandmother's legacy, the money she left to me, and you handed it over to him to throw away in a casino. And you did it all while telling me that I was the failure, while I was pawning my grandmother's locket to pay for my son's medicine. Denise let out a sound, a high-pitched keen. Lawrence was completely gray. He looked at Mr. Graves. "Donald, say something." Mr. Graves looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. "Lawrence, I advised against this. I told you." "You knew," I said to Graves. "You knew and you let this happen." Alana Washington finally stood up. "That is all we need." But it was Ashley who moved. She had been standing by the wall, silent, her face pale. Now she walked slowly toward the table. She looked at Marcus, who was staring at his hands, his whole body shaking. "Marcus," she said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. "Did you know about this?" Marcus flinched. He could not look at her. I I thought it was Mom and Dad's money. I did not ask. I did not." "You knew," she breathed. "You knew they were paying your debts. You knew it was not their money. You knew it was hers." "Ashley, baby, please." He whimpered, finally looking up. It was a long time ago. I can fix this." She did not say another word. She pulled the massive, glittering 3-carat diamond ring from her finger. The ring my parents had been so proud of, the one that proved their son had made it. She looked at Marcus. "I will not," she said, her voice clear and cutting, "marry into a family of criminals." And with a flick of her wrist, she threw the ring right in his face. It hit his cheek with a small tick, before bouncing onto the mahogany table and spinning in the dead silence of the room. The diamond ring hit the mahogany table with a sharp, sickening clack. It spun once, twice, a glittering accusation before wobbling to a stop. Ashley did not look at it. She did not look at anyone. Her face was pale, her entire body shaking not with sadness, but with a cold, terrifying rage. She snatched her purse from the floor. "Marcus," she said, her voice so quiet it was scarier than a scream. "My father's lawyers will be in touch with your father's lawyers. Do not contact me again. Ever." She turned and walked, not ran to the door. She pulled it open, then paused and looked back, not at Marcus, but at my father Lawrence. "You," she said. "You were worried about your family's reputation. You were worried about us showing you up." She let out a laugh, a sound like breaking glass. "My father is going to ruin you. He will not just sue you, he will destroy you." And she was gone. The door slammed shut, echoing in the tomb-like silence of the conference room. That was when Marcus finally broke. It was not a dignified breakdown. He made a sound like a trapped animal, a high-pitched, desperate wail that seemed torn from his throat. He slid out of his chair and onto the expensive carpet, his whole body convulsing. "No, no, no, Ashley, please!" he sobbed, pounding his fists on the floor. "Please do not leave me. Please, I did not know. I did not know." My mother Denise stared at the empty doorway, her face a mask of pure horror. The life she had built, the future she had secured through her son's perfect match, had just walked out. She turned her eyes wild and her gaze landed on me. Her anger was gone. It had been replaced by a raw, primal panic. She rushed around the table and actually fell to her knees in front of my chair. "Simone!" she gasped, grabbing my hands. Her own were ice cold. "Simone, please, you have to fix this. Call her. Tell her it was a misunderstanding. Tell her you will not press charges." I looked down at her, my mother kneeling at my feet. The woman who had ignored my son's birthday, who had called me a selfish failure just days ago. "Fix what, Mom?" I asked, my voice holding no emotion. "Your brother," she cried, her voice cracking. "You cannot do this to Marcus. He will go to jail. Your father? Mr. Graves, this is a felony. They will send him to prison, Simone. You cannot send your own brother to prison." I pulled my hands away from her grasp slowly and deliberately. "I'm not doing anything, Mom," I said. "This is not my doing. You did this. He did this." I pointed at my father, who was still frozen in his chair, staring at the spot where Ashley had stood. You are the ones who committed a crime, I continued. You are the ones who stole my inheritance. You are the ones who forged my signature. You are the ones who took my money, and gave it to him. I pointed at Marcus, who was still sobbing on the floor. You did not just steal from me. You ruined him. You enabled him. You destroyed his future by covering up his sickness. I did not do any of this. You did it to yourselves. My father finally moved. He slowly pushed his chair back and stood up. His face was gray, but his eyes were burning with a familiar stubborn pride. He was trying even now to find a way to be in charge. You will not do it, he said, his voice a low growl. I looked at him. I will not do what, Dad? You will not sue, he said. You will not call the police. You will not file charges. You are all talk, Simone. You always have been. You are weak. You will not dare put your own parents in jail. You will not dare destroy this family in public. He was breathing heavily, trying to intimidate me one last time, trying to find the scared little girl he had always known. You think this is a game, he sneered. You think you are so powerful now with your new house and your new lawyer. But you do not have the stomach for this. You will not do it. I stood up slowly. I walked around the table until I was standing directly in front of him. I was close enough to see the small bead of sweat on his temple. He was right about one thing. I had been weak. I had been scared. My entire life his anger was the one thing I would do anything to avoid. But that was the old Simone. You think so? I asked, my voice just as quiet as his. You stole my son's medical money. You threatened to make him homeless. You forged my name and stole my grandmother's legacy. You did that to me, your daughter. And you think I am the one who is bluffing. I looked him straight in the eye. You think I will not dare. You want to test me, Dad. After everything, do you really want to find out what I am capable of now? He stared at me, searching my face for the old weakness, the familiar, tearful surrender. He found none. He saw Alana Washington, my lawyer, watching him with a predatory stillness. He saw the forensic report on the table. He saw the empty space where his son's fiancée used to be. He saw that he had lost. I let the silence hang for a long, painful beat. Then I turned away. I will give you one choice, I said, walking back to the window. One way out of this. Not for you, not for Mom, and definitely not for him. I looked out at the city skyline, the city I had built my new life in. I am doing this for Grandma Davis, because this is what she would have wanted. Ashley did not just walk out of that conference room. She walked out and set their entire world on fire. She was the daughter of one of the most powerful, respected families in Atlanta. Her engagement to Marcus had been the social event of the season, and her disengagement, as it turned out, was even bigger news. The rumor mill in the Black elite community of Atlanta does not just whisper, it screams. By the time my parents got home to their big empty house in Buckhead, their phones were already blowing up. First came the polite, confused texts from family friends. Denise, darling, I heard the most awful rumor about Marcus and Ashley. Is everything all right? Please call me. Then came the cancellations. The invitation to the mayor's charity ball, the one my mother had been bragging about for months, was quietly, politely rescinded. An email arrived at 9 a.m. the next morning. Given the current circumstances, perhaps it is best if your family sits this one out. We will of course refund your table. My father's weekly golf game with his partners was canceled. Something came up, their assistant said. My parents were not just embarrassed. They were being iced out. They were being shunned. It took 3 full days. 3 days of deafening silence from their social circle. Then my phone rang. I was in my new studio, the beautiful sun-drenched space in Collier Heights, sketching out a new logo concept. I saw Mom flash on the screen. I almost did not answer. But I was curious. I put it on speaker. Simone? It was not a greeting. It was a shriek. a sound of pure, undiluted panic. What did you do? What did you say to Ashley's family? I leaned back in my ergonomic chair looking at my sketch. I told the truth, Mom. That is all. The truth, she sobbed, and I could hear her pacing on her hardwood floors. The truth has ruined us. We are being uninvited from everything. The foundation board meeting was moved without telling your father. My friends Simone, they are not answering my calls. Mrs. Abernathy crossed the street just to avoid me at the market. You have destroyed us. You have destroyed this family. I waited patiently until her sobbing subsided into wet, gulping breaths. I felt nothing, no pity, no anger, just a quiet, empty finality. So let me see if I understand, I said, my voice as calm as a frozen lake. People are not talking to you. You are being excluded from parties. Your friends are ignoring you. It sounds like you are upset because you lost your social image. Yes, she cried. It is everything. It is our name. It is all we have. I see, I said, because I lost $250,000. I lost my grandmother's legacy. I lost my father, my mother, and my brother. I lost my entire family years ago, and I did not even know it. I paused, letting the words sink in. So you will have to forgive me if I do not have a lot of sympathy for your current situation. You are upset about your reputation. I am upset about my life. Tell me, Mom, which one of those sounds worse to you? She had no answer, just a strangled sound, half gasp, half sob. I have to go, Mom. I am very busy. Simone, wait. You have to fix this. You have to call them. You have to tell them it was a... I hung up. Then I opened my phone settings. I found her contact. I found my father's contact. I found Marcus's contact. And I pressed block, block, block. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for a decade. I turned back to my work. My real work. The new S Prime campaign was launching today. It was a massive digital billboard takeover in Times Square, Los Angeles, and right here in downtown Atlanta. My art, my designs, my name, my secret name would be 30 feet tall, illuminated for the entire city to see. My family was busy imploding, consumed by the reputation I had supposedly ruined. Meanwhile, my reputation, the one I built myself, the one they knew nothing about, was about to become legendary. They had made themselves invisible, and I, S Prime, was now everywhere. A few days later, I was working late at the studio. The new house was perfect, but the studio, this was my fortress. It was a converted brick warehouse, all exposed beams and polished concrete floors. It was a stark, beautiful, honest contrast to the prison of my old apartment. I heard a noise at the front security door. Not a crisp knock. A hesitant, almost broken pounding. I checked the security feed on my monitor, and my heart stopped. It was Lawrence, my father. He was standing alone in the rain without a coat, his expensive suit soaked through. He looked old, he looked beaten, he looked defeated. He had found me. He had found the studio. He looked up at the security camera, his face crumpled, water and tears mixing on his cheeks. Simone? His voice was barely audible over the intercom, a rasp. Please, I have nowhere else to go. I buzzed him in. I watched on the black and white security monitor as he pushed through the heavy glass doors of the lobby, his shoulders slumped against the driving rain. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. I did not know why I let him come up. Maybe it was pity, maybe it was a cold surgical curiosity, or maybe after 34 years I just wanted him to see. I stood at the top of the industrial staircase as he climbed, the sound of his heavy soaked shoes echoing on the metal steps. When he reached the top floor, he stopped. He just stopped and stared, frozen on the landing. He was not just looking at me, he was looking at my world. The studio was a massive 2-story open space, a converted warehouse in West Midtown. One entire wall was 20 feet of solid glass, looking out at the glittering, rain-slicked Atlanta skyline. The other walls were exposed century-old brick, but they were covered. He walked like a man in a dream past the reception desk. His eyes scanned the wall to his right. It was the wall I kept for myself, the brag wall. He saw the design awards from New York. He saw the plaques from the Art Directors Club. He saw the Visionary and Tech trophy I had won last year. His gaze moved to the massive whiteboards that covered the far wall. They were covered in sketches, campaign flows, and corporate logos. Names he recognized, names he revered. Mercedes-Benz, Nike, Coca-Cola. He saw the preliminary designs for the billboard he had probably driven past an hour ago, the one for the new global music streaming service. He saw the cover art for the multi-platinum album that was probably playing in his own car. He saw a world of impossible success, of influence and power, and it all belonged to the daughter he had called a failure. He finally turned to me. The rain was dripping from his expensive, now ruined Brioni suit, forming a small, pathetic puddle on my polished concrete floor. The man who had roared at me, who had commanded me, who had threatened me, was gone. This man was a stranger. He looked old, frail, and utterly broken. "You won," he whispered. His voice was hoarse. It was not a congratulations. It was a surrender. "You won, Simone. You have the house. You have all of this. You ruined Marcus. You ruined your mother. You ruined me." He slumped into one of the designer chairs by the window, not waiting for an invitation. He put his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. "So what is it?" he asked, his voice muffled. "What do you want?" He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "Is it money? Is that what this is all about? Fine, you want the money. We will pay you back. We will sell the house. We will liquidate the retirement funds. Just tell me the number. How much to make this stop?" I walked over to my drafting table and leaned against it, crossing my arms. I looked at this man, my father, offering me scraps from a life he no longer controlled, and I felt nothing but a cold, distant pity. "Money," I said. I almost laughed. "You think I did this for money?" "Dad, I do not need your money. I do not need your retirement funds. I do not need you to sell your house." I let the silence hang, letting him understand. "I make more in a month as Prime than you and Marcus made in the last year at your struggling company. I make more money than this entire family, including Ashley's, has ever seen." His face just crumpled. It was the truth, and the truth was a brutal, ugly thing. "I do not want your money," I said again, my voice softer now. "You want to know what I remember, Dad? I remember being 14. I remember getting chosen for the statewide honors art program, a 3-day field trip to the High Museum. It cost $50. $50. I watched his face. He did not remember. Of course he did not. "I begged you for the money," I whispered. "And do you know what you said? You said art is frivolous, Simone. It is a waste of time. Your brother needs new cleats for football. That is an investment in a future. You told me to stop wasting my time on hobbies and to stay home and do my chores." I walked over to the glass wall and looked out at the city. My city. "I learned something that day, Dad. I learned that I could never, ever depend on you, so I built my own future. I built this." I turned back to him. He looked completely defeated. He had nothing left to offer. He had no power, no authority, no money that mattered. "So what do you want?" he whispered, his voice cracking. If it is not money, what, you are going to go to the police, you are going to send me to prison, is that it? You want to see your own father in handcuffs?" He looked at me, a lifetime of broken trust in his eyes, finally realizing he had no moves left. I looked at him, at the man who had threatened my son's home over a party, at the man who had stolen my inheritance, at the man who had called me a failure. "Prison," I said. "No, that is too easy. That is just a simple punishment. I do not want punishment, Dad. I picked up a small, beautiful watercolor painting from my desk. It was the first one I had ever sold. I want something far more valuable than money. I want something you and Mom took from me. Something you tried to give to Marcus that he just threw away. He just stared at me confused. What are you talking about? I met his gaze. I want Grandma's legacy restored. The final meeting took place at my studio. It was my territory, not theirs. Not the stuffy, wood-paneled office of their family lawyer, Mr. Graves. Not their sterile Buckhead mansion. My space. The massive warehouse with its 20-foot ceilings and walls of glass felt like a courtroom, and I was finally the judge. They filed in one by one. Lawrence, my father, looked a decade older. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and his eyes, once so commanding and full of fire, were dull and bloodshot. My mother, Denise, followed him, her face puffy from days of crying. She was not crying for me, or even for what she had done. She was crying for her social status, for her reputation, which was now in ashes. And then came Marcus, my golden boy brother. He looked like a ghost. He was pale, shaking, and his eyes darted around the studio, taking in the awards, the massive S Prime logo on the wall, the sheer scale of my success. He looked like a man who had finally, and far too late, realized he had bet on the wrong horse. My lawyer, Alana Washington, sat at the head of the long steel conference table, her files arranged in a perfect menacing line. She simply nodded as they took their seats. They looked small in the massive industrial space. I let them sit in the silence for a long, heavy minute. I let them squirm. Finally, I spoke. I have made a decision, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the open room. My mother flinched. My father just stared at his hands. I have spent the last few days in consultation with my legal team. I gestured to Alana, who watched them without blinking. We have reviewed the forensic accounting reports. We have copies of the forged withdrawal slips. We have the wire transfer record showing my $250,000 moving from my trust to your account, and then within 48 hours to various online casinos and bookmakers in Las Vegas. We have a clear-cut, undeniable case for felony forgery, grand theft, and wire fraud. Marcus made a small, choked sound. However, I continued, I have decided not to pursue criminal charges. I watched the breath leave my father's body in a long, shaky sigh. My mother actually closed her eyes, her hand flying to her chest. They thought it was over. They thought they had gotten away with it. They thought the failure daughter had once again caved. And, I added, I will also forgive the $250,000 debt you stole from me. You will not have to pay me back. My father looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief. Simone, thank you. I held up my hand, cutting him off. I am not finished. My forgiveness is not free. It is conditional. You will not simply walk away from this. You will not go back to your old lives. I paused, walking over to the glass wall. Condition 1. You will sell the house in Buckhead. You cannot afford it. You have been living a lie propped up by my stolen money and bad loans. That lie ends. You will sell it, and you will use the proceeds to settle your own debts. Not Marcus's. Yours. But our home, Denise whispered. It was not a home, I said, not looking at her. It was a stage, and the show is over. Condition 2, I continued. The other $250,000. Marcus's share of the trust. The money you have not yet stolen. You will transfer all of it, every single cent, into a new fund. What fund? Lawrence asked, his voice wary. The Grandma Davis Community Arts Fund, I said. A fund I will be the sole administrator of. I will use Grandma's legacy, the one you both ignored, to fund arts programs for underprivileged Black kids here in Atlanta. Condition 3, I said, turning to face them. I will run that fund. I will make all the decisions. You will have no part in it. It will be my name and Grandma's name attached to that good work, not yours. I let that sink in before I delivered the final most important condition. And Marcus. My brother, who had been trying to shrink into his chair, looked up, his eyes terrified. You, I said, walking toward him, are going to work for me. He physically recoiled. Work. Work for you. You are going to be the administrator of the fund. You will report directly to me and to my board. You will work full-time, 40 hours a week. You will process grant applications. You will file the paperwork. You will visit the community centers. You will see what it means to actually work. I smiled. And you will do it for 2 years, unpaid. The silence was broken by Marcus, who shot to his feet, his chair scraping violently on the concrete. No, absolutely not 2 years unpaid. That is slavery. You cannot make me do that. He looked at my father. Dad, tell her, she cannot do this. My father said nothing. He just stared at the table. I looked at my brother, my golden boy brother, the future of the family. I cannot, I asked. You think I cannot, Alana? I said, turning to my lawyer. Remind me, what is the standard mandatory minimum for felony wire fraud across state lines, especially with a prior record of, let's call them, financial indiscretions? Alana Washington, without even looking at a file, spoke to the ceiling. With the amount over $250,000 and the evidence of forgery, he would be lucky to get 5 years, more likely 7 to 10, and that is with a plea deal. I turned back to Marcus. His face was the color of drywall. So you have a choice, Marcus, I said. It is a very simple one. You can have 2 years of work, 2 years of learning responsibility, 2 years of seeing money actually help people, 2 years of paying back the community you and this family have been leeching off of. I stepped closer to him. Or, you can have 10 years in a state prison. I pointed to the door. Choose. Right now, choose. Marcus looked at my father. Dad. My father could not meet his eyes. He looked at my mother. She was just weeping silently. He looked at me, at my cold, calm, unblinking stare. He saw no weakness. He saw no path of escape. He collapsed back into his chair, his entire body deflating. He put his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. He whispered, his voice broken. I agree. 1 year later, the scent of grilled peaches and jasmine hung in the warm Atlanta air. My backyard in Collier Heights was alive, not with the ghosts of a sad, empty party, but with the vibrant, chaotic sound of life. This was Leo's 9th birthday, and it was also the very first fundraiser for the Grandma Davis Community Arts Fund. The contrast to last year was so profound, it almost hurt. Where there had been 2 of us in a silent apartment, there were now nearly 100 people. On the far side of the lawn, under a large white tent, 20 children from underserved neighborhoods in Atlanta were painting on real easels, their faces smeared with bright colors, their laughter loud. Our first class of scholarship recipients. On the terrace, my other family, my S-Prime colleagues, and my wealthy clients mingled with community leaders. They held champagne flutes, not champagne-flavored apologies, and they were writing checks, real checks. My lawyer, Alana Washington, was laughing with a city councilwoman, both of them looking over at the kids' art station with genuine appreciation. And in the middle of it all, clipboard in hand, was Marcus. He was thinner. The arrogance that had defined him his entire life was gone, replaced by a quiet, weary competence. He wore a simple navy blue polo shirt, with the new GD Fund logo embroidered on the chest. He was not a guest. He was working. He directed the caterers, checked on the kids' art supplies, and coordinated with the jazz trio playing softly by the pool. He saw me watching, and walked over holding out his clipboard. He did not smile, not fully, but the constant sneer he used to wear was gone. The reports are in, he said, his voice quiet. We passed our fundraising goal. By 30% actually. The check from the Coca-Cola Foundation just cleared. That is great news, Marcus, I said. He nodded, looking at the kids. That little girl, the one in the red dress, she is really good. Like, really good. She might be the real thing. I know, I said, smiling. I have been watching her. He finally looked at me, a flicker of the old Marcus, but different now. It is good work, Simone. What you are doing. He hesitated, then said the words I never thought I would hear from him. Thank you. I nodded, accepting it. Thank you, Marcus. You ran this event perfectly. You did good work today. He gave a single sharp nod, as if my approval was a new strange currency he was still learning to value. And then he turned and walked back to his post clipboard in hand to do the job. It was then, as the party was in full swing, that I felt a change in the atmosphere, a small, cold pocket in the warmth of the day. I turned toward the entrance to the yard, and I saw them. They were standing just inside the gate, uninvited, looking completely and utterly lost. My father, Lawrence, and my mother, Denise. They were not the people I remembered. The power was gone. The immaculate, expensive armor of their buckhead life was gone. My father's suit was gone, replaced by a simple off-the-rack button-down shirt that looked too big for him. My mother's designer dress was gone, replaced by a simple floral skirt and blouse. They looked normal. They looked like strangers. I learned from a cousin they had sold the house. They were living in a small rental apartment across town. Their reputation, their social life had evaporated after Ashley's family, and then my own legal team finished with them. They just stood there watching the party, watching this world I had built. A world they had no part in. A world that thrived without them. My mother was holding a small, awkwardly wrapped gift. It looked like it was from a drugstore. It was a package of colored pencils. I felt nothing. Not anger, not hate, not even the satisfaction of revenge. Just a deep, quiet stillness. The final chapter was closing. They saw me looking at them. My mother flinched. My father squared his shoulders, a ghost of his old pride, but his eyes were filled with a desperate, homeless fear. They did not move. They did not dare approach me. They were waiting for permission. I did not walk over. I did not wave. I did not smile. I looked at them for a long, final moment. I saw them for exactly who they were. Two broken, flawed people who had made terrible choices. Then I turned my head. I looked across the lawn to where my son Leo was showing his own painting to a group of friends. He was laughing, his face bright with the uncomplicated joy of a 9-year-old. I caught his eye, and I nodded, just once. A small, simple gesture. A release. Leo's face lit up. He did not know the whole story. He just knew his grandparents were here. He ran across the grass, a blur of happiness. Grandma, Grandpa, you came. I watched from a distance. I watched him throw his arms around my father's legs. I watched my father's hand, the one that had threatened me, come up to rest, shaking on my son's head. I watched my mother, Denise, burst into tears. Not the fake performative sobs I had seen in the lawyer's office, but real, silent, gut-wrenching tears as she knelt and hugged her grandson. "Happy birthday, baby," she whispered, her voice choked. My father looked up, his eyes searching for mine across the yard. He was looking for forgiveness, for an answer, for me to come over and make it all okay. I just held his gaze. I gave him nothing. And then I turned my back. I turned away from them and I walked toward the music. I walked toward my friends. I walked toward the children painting their bright, beautiful futures. I walked toward my life, the one I had built, the one I had paid for, the one that belonged only to me. The gate was open behind me. They could come in. They could see their grandson. But I was no longer the one standing there holding the door, begging them to enter. I was not responsible for them anymore. I was finally and completely free. This story teaches a powerful lesson: your worth is never defined by the people who refuse to see it. Simone was dismissed as a failure, but she refused to let her family's toxic narrative become her reality. While they saw her as weak and dependent, she was silently building her own empire. True power does not come from begging for a seat at their table, it comes from building your own. Financial independence is the ultimate freedom, giving you the power to set boundaries, demand accountability, and rewrite your own story, turning their judgment into irrelevant noise. Have you ever had to reclaim your power from someone who underestimated you? Share your story of triumph in the comments below, and do not forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice served.